Hello friends, welcome back. In this video, we'll discuss all about path variable annotation. So guys, after watching this video, you would be able to answer all the interview questions regarding path variable annotation. Alright, so that being said, let's begin the video. So guys, in this video, we'll see what is URI parameter. We'll talk about path variable annotation. We'll discuss what is path variable name. We'll discuss how can we handle multiple path variables. Then we'll see how to handle multiple path variables using Java map. Okay. Then we'll see optional path variables. So how to deal with, or how can you make a path variable as optional. All right. And then in the end, we'll see how to handle optional path variables by using Java 8 optional class. All right. So guys, I believe you are clear with the agenda. So let's move. Now guys, first of all, we'll discuss what is URI parameter. So guys, I believe you might have seen this kind of URLs or endpoints, right? http://localhost, basically your server, then port number, then /users/user, and then 1. Here we have supplied another variable or a parameter called supergirl. Here we have two variables, 1 and then Kara, right? So this is basically user ID, this is username, and here we have user ID and username both, right? So guys, what do you call these variables, these values, like ID, name, ID and name? What do you call these? So guys, these arguments which you see here, ID, name, ID and name, are known as URI parameters or path variables, because these arguments are part of the URL path. Okay, that's why we call it URI parameters or path variables. Alright, so guys, you know that we can pass arguments in the URL itself, right? Like ID, we have got name here, ID and name both, right? So basically we can pass parameters or input values into the URL itself. Now the question is, how can we read these values? How can we extract these values from the URI itself, right? So guys, to extract these parameters or these variables from the URL, we use @path variable annotation, okay? So guys, as mentioned here, @path variable annotation is used to extract the value from the URI. Okay, so here I have put one example. Here, if you see in the get mapping, we are passing one parameter called ID, and I have used @path variable in the get user function to read the ID value from the URI. All right. So guys, let me do one thing. Let me start the ID and let me give an example, because if you look at the demo, you will get more idea. All right. So guys, I already have a very simple Java project, user REST API, and I already have one function, get all users. So let me just first run our project. I just want to show you guys how it looks like as of now, and then we'll talk about @path variable. Okay. So I'm going to run as springboot application. So what do I have? I have one user controller, and if I go to the service layer, I have one list of users. So basically it is a static list, right? And I've got a function, get all users. Okay, so our application has started on port number 8080. Let's go to the browser. Okay guys, so I'm going to hit localhost :8080/API/users. So guys, what do you see here? So basically as of now, we have one endpoint, and here I can see the list of all the users, right? So this is what our application is doing at the moment. All right, let's go back to the IDE. Now guys, what we want to do is, we'll talk about @path variable annotation. Okay, so guys, what we want to do is, we want to fetch the user information, user details, by using user ID. Okay, let's create the endpoint first. Okay, so http://localhost :8080/API/users/user/ and then ID. Okay, so basically our endpoint, our URL will have one argument, one parameter. Okay, and the name is ID, right? So let's go and create a function, public user. I will write get user by ID is the function, right? And guys, here I will use return, and then I have a service class here, service. I'm going to create same function, get user by ID, in the service layer. Okay, so we'll create a function in a moment. Let's go and add the get mapping, @get mapping. So guys, if you look at it here at the root level, at the class level, I've already put a mapping here, //users, right? So I have to add only /user, curly braces, and then ID. Okay, this particular thing in the get mapping. So this is the path or the location. So like guys, there are multiple ways to do it. you can write path equals to this one or value equals to this particular thing. Alright, now guys, the point is we want to read the ID value from the URL, right? So I'm going to use @path variable annotation and I will write a string ID. Simple, right? Let me just this out here so that we know that plus ID. Okay, now guys, here if you look at our list, right, let me just take you to the list of users. So here in our list, our ID is integer value, right? So I'm going to convert our integer dot %id because here from path variables I'm getting as a string value, so I have to convert into an integer. Okay, let's go and create a function into the service layer. So I will first change here ID. Now we want to fetch the user. Okay, so what I will do, I will write user u, or say u on user equals to null. So guys, I already have a list of users here. I'm calling it users only. So now I will iterate through the list of users, user u colon users. I'm using enhanced for each loop, and what I will do here, I will compare u dot get id equals to id, the value which is coming from the URL. Okay, if it is matches, then I want my user to u, and I will break the loop because there is no need to iterate. We have already got our answer, and in return I will return the user variable. Okay, all right, so I don't see any error here. Now just right click, run as springboot app. Okay, started. Let's go to the browser. I'll open a new tab. Now guys, the endpoint is localhost 8080/API/users/user/id. I'm passing 1 here. Let's see the result. What do you see? You have got the user 1 information, first name, last name, and email ID. Okay, I can pass second user like ID2, hit enter. So now I have got the second user details, ID2, first name Alex, second name Danris, here is email ID, right? So basically I can pass the ID here, and here we are getting the information, right? So let's go to the application. So as here you can see the list of IDs that we supplied 1, 2, 3, right? So as here I have explained how can you use @path variable annotation to read the parameter from the URL. All right, let's move. Now guys, next is path variable name. So guys, this comes into picture when the path variable name is different from the method parameter name. So guys, if you look at it here in this endpoint, the path variable name is ID. Here we have name, here we have ID and name, right? So in case path variable name is different from your function variable. So guys, if you look at it here, the URI parameter, right? Or the path variable name is ID. So this value is different from this ID, right? So in this kind of situation, what we have to do is we need to provide the mapping that I want to map this path variable with this particular variable of my method. Okay, so guys, let's go back to the IDE. Let me give you a demo. All right, okay, so guys, what I will do, I will just copy paste the same example just to save time, and I will comment this portion. Okay, now here we want to talk about path variable name, right? So guys, if you see here, the path variable name is ID, right? And here also we are using ID, but say in case I want to use user ID in my code, I don't want to use ID, I want to call it user ID. Okay, so what I will do, I will simply write here user ID equals to user ID, and I will put ID here. Okay, now guys, let's do one thing. Let's try to run our application. Let's see how it behaves at the moment. Okay, what we did, we have made very small change. We have just changed the method variable name. Simple, right? So let's go and run our application. Let's test how it behaves. Right click, run as a Spring Boot application. So guys, here also I'm going to the same endpoint. Let's go to the browser. I'm going to use same, and I'll just hit enter. So you see we have got the error message. Let's go to the IDE. Now guys, if you look at it here in the console, you will see an error message saying that required URI template variable user ID for method parameter type string is not present. So basically saying that required template variable user ID is not present. Why? Because here we are calling it user ID. We are trying to read user ID, but the variable which is coming is ID. So there is a difference, right? So to handle this particular situation, what we can do is we can use name equals to double quotes and ID, right? So this way path variable will map this ID from the URL parameter to this local variable. Okay, now I will stop our application and start again, and then we'll see how it behaves now. Right click, run as Spring Boot app. Okay, let's go to the browser. I'm going to refresh. What do you see? Now you see the result. Let me just go and change the value. I'll pass ID4 and I can see the result, right? So basically guys, whenever you have a difference between URL parameter name and your function variable name, you have to use path variable name. Okay. So guys, there are multiple ways to do it. You can use either name or you can use value as well. This will work fine. Or what you can do is, if you use simple like this, path variable and then inside the bracket double quotes URL parameter name. Again, this thing will work perfectly fine. So guys, there are multiple ways to do it. Okay. So I will just write down here @path variable. The very first thing is name equals to double quotes and then ID. Okay. This is one way, or if you want, you can use value, right? This will work fine. And this is the most common @path variable bracket and inside double quotes you will put your parameter name. Alright guys, I hope it is clear. Now let's move. Now guys, next thing is how to handle multiple path variables. So say for example, you want to fetch the user information by using user ID and name, two path variables. So let me give you a demo. Let's go back to the IDE. Alright, so what I will do, say multiple path variables. Okay, so what I will do guys, I'll create a function here, public user, and this time get user by ID and name. Okay, right? So let's go and create our endpoint first. http://localhost:8080/API/users/user, and then first argument is going to be ID, second parameter is going to be name, right? The rate get mapping /user/ first is ID / and then name. All right, so guys, this is the must-have thing, else your application won't work, right? Now here in this case we have got two URL parameters, right? Two URI parameters. So I will use @path variable and string ID is the first one. For the second variable, I will use one more path variable, string and name. Okay, guys, let's go and sys out. I just want to print the values coming from the URL ID plus and name equals to, I will simply print name. Okay, so let's go and return. I will call service dot, I will create a function get user by ID and name. Okay, now here I'll pass, again I will do same thing because our ID is integer value, so I will use integer dot parseInt and I will pass ID here, comma, I will supply the second argument which is name. Okay, let's go and create this particular function in our service class. Here we are. So first of all, I will just change the variable name to ID. Okay, so user equals to null. Again guys, I will do same thing. I will simply iterate through the list of users. Okay, colon users. Now I want to match ID and name both, right? So what I will do, I will use u dot get ID equals to ID, and I want to match the name, and u dot get first name dot equals, ignore case, the name which is coming from the URL, right? If both are matching, I want to assign this user to my user variable. Okay, let's break the loop and I will return user. So guys, this is the very simple implementation. I don't think there is a need to discuss. Let's go back to the controller class. Okay, so all good. Let me just stop our application and let me restart. So guys, here we want to read ID and name from the URL. Okay, so let's go back to the browser and I will type localhost :8080/API/users/user/. Now I want to pass two arguments. One is ID and the first name of the user. So I'm passing Kara. Let me hit enter. What do you see? You got your result, right? Where ID equals to 1 and first name is Kara, right? So if I go and check this out, here I can see that we have successfully received ID and name from the URL, right guys? Let's go back to the browser one more time, and with this time we'll pass, say, second user ID 2 and user is first name is Alex. Here you got the data, right? So things are going good. Here you can see the input values, ID equals to 2 and name equals to Alex. Let's move. Alright guys, now the next is how can we handle multiple path variables by using Java maps. So guys, just now I have explained that you can use @path variable notation multiple times to read multiple parameters from the URL. But guys, there's one more way of doing it, that is by using Java map. Okay, so Java map to handle multiple path variables. Okay, So guys, what I will do, let me just comment everything for now. Okay, so guys, what you want to do is I will simply copy this function. This time I'll change the endpoint to http://localhost:8080/API/user. Now this time I want to pass three arguments. One is ID, second parameter is going to be name, and I also want to pass email. Right, now let's see how can we receive these three variables. Okay, so guys, what I will do, I will remove @path variable annotation. What I will do, I will add @path variable annotation, and this time guys, I'm going to make use of the map. This is Java map. Okay, so our key is string value and the value is also of type string, and here I will call it all params. This is the variable name, you can give it any name. We have to import, so I'll import. Okay, now guys, let's go to sysout. So here, because I'm using a map, so what I will do, I will use all params.get, and here I will pass the key. So I know the first key is ID. Okay, and to read the name, what I will do, I will use get, and this time I will pass name. I can see that on here, right? Now guys, here we have to add one more, email. Okay, so let's go and print. I will just come down. Let's go and print email equals to, I will use all params.get, and this time the key is email. Okay, so guys, I'm not going to modify the function. I will use the same function. I will just simply pass the new values, because I just want to show you guys how can you read multiple arguments, multiple parameters from the URL by using map. Okay, so I'm going to call the same function, but here I will pass ID and name. So I will pass all params.get. Okay, so guys, if you want, you can create a new function by using email as well. You can add one more parameter here, email, to the record should match with ID, name, and the supplied email ID. Okay, but that is not the idea. Here I just want to explain that how can you use map, Java util map, to read the multiple parameters from the URL. Okay, let me just stop our application, right click, run as springboot app. Okay, so it says your application has started. Let's go to the browser, new tab, and then localhost:8080/API/users. Now I want to pass three parameters. One is ID, second one is name, and next one is email ID. So I will pass kara@supergirl.com. Right, so basically we are passing three parameters in the URL. What do you see? You have got your result, and here you can see your endpoint. Okay, so let's go to the sysout. Yeah, here you can see ID equals to 1, name equals to Kara, and email. Right, so guys, by using Java util map also, you can read multiple parameters from the URL. Alright guys, now the next one is optional path variable. Say for example, you have ID and name, and you want to make name as optional. If it is available, include the username as well to fetch the user information. If it is not available, then use ID only to fetch the user details. Okay, so basically you want to make one parameter as optional. It may or may not available to you. Alright, so let's go back to the IDE. So guys, what I will do, I will simply comment this portion here, right? And then we want to talk about optional path variable here. Okay, so guys, what we want to do is, say for example, I have got here public user get user by ID or ID and name. Okay, so if I have ID, then fetch the user by using ID only. If there's a name available, then use name as well. Okay, you can give it a better name. Now guys, what I will do here, let me just create the endpoint first, http://. Now here we are passing ID, right? And second argument, which is going to be optional, so it's a name. Okay, so guys, what I will do, how to read, we'll use @path variable. Okay, and string ID, comma, second argument we'll use @path variable, string name. Okay, now guys, here, so we know that name could be optional. It may or may not available, right? So what we'll do, how can we make this particular parameter as optional? We'll use required equals to false, this particular property. Required equals to false. It means that this particular variable or parameter is not required. It is optional. It may or may not available. Okay, so guys, what I will do here, let's do one thing. I will first sysout here, ID equals to ID plus name equals to name. Okay, now so what I will do here, if name is not equals to null and name dot length is greater than 0, it means that we have got name. Okay, So if this is the case, I'll do one more thing. User equals to null, and let's bring it down here. User equals to, I will call service layer dot get user by ID and name, because name is not null and length is also not null. It means we have got name. There is some value in the name parameter, right? So I will pass here name, ID first. So I will use integer dot parse int, and I will pass ID. Let me just fix it, integer, okay? And here name is good, right? So basically we are passing two parameters, ID and name, to fetch the user information. But in case if name is not available or if it is null, what I will do, I will use user service dot get user by ID, because we have got only one parameter, user dot parse int, and I will pass ID here. Simple, right? And finally we'll return the user. That's it. So let me just go and add the get mapping here. Get mapping, and this time I will use path equals to, so I'll just explain in a moment, user slash, now I know that name is optional, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm adding two endpoints, user ID slash name. So guys, what is happening here? If I have only ID, call the same function. If I am getting ID and name both, then call the same function, okay? So let me stop our application and I will quickly restart. So basically here we have added two endpoints. Let's go to the browser. Say I want to pass both ID and name. So if you look at the endpoint, I am passing ID and name both. ID is 1, name is Kara, and here I can see the result, okay? So let's go to this result. Here you can see that we have supplied both ID and name, and we have got it here, and we can see the result as well. But now, as I said, name could be optional, okay? So guys, what I will do, I'll go here and I will remove the name from the URL. Let me hit enter, and here I still see the result. Let's go to the console. Now guys, what do you see here? ID equals to 1 and name equals to null, because we did not pass, but still we see the result, right? So basically by using required equals to false, you can make a path variable as optional parameter. Alright guys, I hope this is clear. Let's move. Now guys, next thing is how can you handle optional path variable by using Java 8. So this is again very important interview question, okay? So let's go back to the IDE. So guys, here what I will do, I'll just copy everything and I will comment this function just to avoid confusion actually. Now guys, here what we want to do is we want to handle optional using Java 8 optional class. So guys, if you see here what we did, we have used required equals to false to set name as optional parameter, right? What is the other way of doing thing? Second way is, let me just remove. What I can do is I'm going to use optional class of Java 8, optional class of Java 8, okay? So what I'm doing here is I'm using optional to make name as optional variable, okay? So guys, if you click here on optional, you will see that it's a class from Java 8. Okay, now guys, parameter is of type optional. Now how can we handle, how can we read the value? So what I will do here, I'll go here, I will use name dot, there is a function called is present in Java 8 optional class. So basically it will check whether there is a value or not in this particular variable. If there is a value, what you can do is you can use name dot get function to read the value. Okay, let me save. Alright guys, that's it. Very small change. What we did, we simply changed the type of the variable from string to optional, okay, and we have removed required equals to false. Let me just stop our application and let's see how it behaves. Let me just run. Okay, let's go to the browser. I'll change here only. So what I will do, let's say I want to pass ID and name both, and here I see the result. Let's go back to the console. So guys, here you can see ID equals to 1, name equals to optional, and then there is a value. So our value is string Kara only, but what we are getting optional, okay? So guys, if you go back to the code, here name is containing optional bracket Kara, okay, this particular value. To read the value only, the string Kara from the optional, we are using name.get, okay? So I'll do one thing, I will simply make change here only, get from optional. So what I will do, I will use name.get. So this works. Okay, so now guys, do one thing. Let me just remove the name. I want to pass ID only. What do you see? You still see your result. If you go back here, what do you see? and id equals to 1 and name is empty because we did not pass. I just want to explain how can you read the value from the optional variable. So I've used name.get, right? Here also name.get, and here I've used name only. So let's see the difference. I'll simply stop, right click, run as springboot apps, go to the browser. Okay, and this time I will pass /kara. So this is doing good. I can see the result. Let's go to the id. Now guys, what do you see here? id equals to 1, name equals to optional, and then bracket, then you have your value kara. But if you use name.get, you simply get the string value kara. I hope it is clear. Guys, if you want to know more about Java 8 optional class, there is a video. I will share the link in the video description. Alright? Alright guys, so here we are done with this video. In this video, we have covered almost everything about path variable annotation. Right guys, I hope you have got a better understanding of path variable annotation. Thank you.